Alrighty guys, we got a lot to cover on this section about the GRE. It's going to be all about saving your money, helping you study more effectively, get the score you want, and move on. So what is the GRE? It is a standardized test that's required to get into most graduate schools. Imagine that, the graduate records examination. So here are the different sections that will be scored to determine how you compare to other applicants. You have the quantitative, verbal, and analytical sections. Quantitative is basically going to be high school math, which is kind of frustrating, but it's reviewing that and seeing how well you can problem solve and be able to use those basic math skills. And you're going to have 40 minutes for each section, and you'll have 25 questions. The verbal, 2 sections as well. This is going to be all about vocabulary and reading comprehension and being able to have context and determining which words to put in using context clues and things like that. 30 minutes, 25 questions. So you got to move pretty quickly, especially on those reading comprehension sections. The analytical section is about being able to formulate an argument and being able to determine how logical someone else's argument is. So those are the 2 different essays, and they're 30 minutes each. So it's pretty quick. You're moving through a lot of material, and the test also is going to require some endurance. So as I showed on the previous slide, the scores are between 130 and 170. You get a 170, that's perfect on that section. And then they combine your scores to give you a composite score. So these are the numbers given by the PTCast applicant data report for the percentiles that people scored in who were accepted into PT school. And over on the right, these are the percentile scores. I looked those up for you. So you can go through and do the math, but in general, this is where people are scoring. You need a composite score, or a combined quantitative and verbal, of between a 303 and a 307, and an analytical score of a 4. Analytical is scored every half point from 0 to 6. Okay, so when and how do you take the GRE? So you're going to register on ets.org to sign up for a local testing center. Just to sign up for the test is $205. It's pretty expensive for something that's not guaranteed. So the test is also taken on a computer, and you'll go to a testing center where there'll be other people who are taking maybe the DAT or the NCLEX or some other standardized test, and you'll all be in these little cubicles working on your test. So I'm just bringing this up so I can help us determine how we can plan for it. You can retake the GRE 21 days from when you previously have taken it. You may need to also plan for additional time to study if you do need to retake it, if you find an area that you were particularly weak. So, in general, I recommend that you take it the May or June before you apply. So that way, in case you need to retake it, you have plenty of time before the application opens on July 1st through PTCast. Something else to consider, though, is your GRE scores are good for 5 years. So that gives you some wiggle room as well. But you may or may not want to take it closer to your application so that there's more focus, more energy. It's up to you, though. This is a general recommendation. This is what I've done. This is what a lot of people that I applied with did as well, and it worked well for us. So how do you prepare? And when should you start preparing? This first slide is going to go through a general formula that is going to be kind of your basis of studying. So without studying at all, to give you a baseline measure of where you're at, take a practice test. Then you're going to identify weak areas that you struggled with during the practice test. You're going to study and boost your confidence. And then you're going to take another practice test and see how you improve. And then you repeat this pattern as necessary. So I think it's better to have a more intensive study period instead of dragging it out over months. And if you have 2 to 3 months where you're really, really focused on something, I think your outcomes are going to be a lot better, particularly for studying for the GRE. And then you're not going to waste all this extra time studying for something that isn't even very indicative of what kind of an applicant you're going to be. It's just something that PT schools require because it gives them another metric to compare you to other applicants. Some schools don't even care that much about your GRE scores. Some schools weigh your GRE score a lot. So it just depends. But either way, we just want you to get the score that you need so you can move on and you don't have to fuss with it anymore. So this is why I recommend 2 to 3 month period of practice test, study, practice test, repeat. So if you have a lighter semester in your schedule, you also might consider, well, if I'm going to have a pretty heavy semester right before I apply, and I'm not going to have as much time to study and take it in May or June, then consider taking it during that semester. Make things easier for yourself. So the amount of time that you need to study is going to be dictated by how well you do on your practice tests. If you do really, really well on the first practice test and you're like, hey, I think I got this in the bag, this isn't going to be that hard for me, then maybe you just brush up on a few things and maybe take another practice test, and that way you're just confident, you go in and you crush it. Someone else, they might just be really nervous when they take it the first time and they don't do as well. And just by having the practice of taking the test, that's automatically going to boost your score a little bit just because you're more familiar with how it runs. So, take your practice test and then devote 2 to 3 hours a week to studying your weak areas. This doesn't mean that you have to sit down for 2 to 3 hours in one setting. It just means cumulatively 2 to 3 hours that week. You break it up how you want. Okay, so like we talked about, $205 just to sign up for this thing. The numbers get more ghastly from here. For the love of PT, please don't sign up for a $1,000 prep course. All of these different groups, whether it's Kaplan or ETS or Manhattan Prep, any of those other guys, they're going to come and try to sell you a prep course that is going to cost you an arm and a leg. So without even taking the test, paying for a prep course and paying for the GRE itself, that's already $1,200. That's stupid. So you're too smart to get hustled by these guys. At least initially, unless you are struggling severely to be able to get the score that you want, you don't need a prep course. I guarantee you can do it. If you're disciplined and you follow the pattern, you'll do great. So ETS has what's called their Power Prep course, and it provides you two full-length practice tests for free. So this Power Prep course is completely free. It's provided by ETS, and I've provided the link for you in the GRE Prep worksheet. Something else to consider is you may have friends or family members who've recently taken the GRE, who have a practice test book, or maybe they have a CD that has some practice tests on it, and they'd be willing to give it to you for a discounted price or for free. I know when I had my book after I took the GRE and I was done with it, I said, I don't want this thing. It's just going to be collecting dust on my bookshelf. So I gave it away to one of my friends. But you need to be warned, not all test prep books are created equal. Some of them just don't have as rigorous of questions. Some of them don't have practice tests in them. And in general, I feel like as a minimum, you want to have a book that has multiple practice tests or diagnostic tests so you can determine your areas of weakness, be able to study, and improve from there. All of these things are going to help save you a ton of money. So what does Amazon have to say about GRE prep books? This is the #1 bestseller in test prep and study guides. This is the Manhattan Prep 5-pound book of practice problems. I didn't buy this book. I didn't use it personally, but all the reviews are saying great things about it. And it's cheap. It's $11 used. So I'm not going to say you have to buy this book, but it's a great bang for your buck. And it has diagnostic tests in it, so you can be able to determine, I'm good with this, I'm not as good with this.